Have you ever heard of the King Alfred Plan by the CIA? Yeah, the CIA. Well, it was pulled off with the help of the pastors and the civil rights leaders. But go ahead and read.
This is Rex 84. This is was a classified scenario and drill developed by the United States federal government to detain large numbers of United States citizens deemed to be a national security threat in the event that the president declared a national emergency.
It was a plan that was devised merely on the basis of ongoing American history.
That government plan to suspend the Constitution, declare martial law, and round up anyone deemed a national security threat, it's documented. It's called Rex 84. It was cooked up under the Reagan administration by Colonel Oliver North.
Nothing but the truth, so help you God, I do.
Spike. Contingency plans by the U.S. government for rounding up people perceived by the government to be subversive or a threat to civil order have existed for many decades. For example, from 1967 to 1971, the FBI kept a list of over 100,000 people to be rounded up as subversive, dubbed the 8X list.
What would any administration do in a situation where large segments of the population were discontented and tearing down their neighborhoods and threatening the order and of the established regime?
Because they want you guys to stay down here with the lack of knowledge, with the lack of power, with the lack of leadership. Because the moment that you receive this heightened, elevated knowledge, they know that the program falls, and they know that they won't be able to control the masses, because all the masses, the majority of this world is black. Black was first, and it will be the last ones here. Yo.
Alex Jones has warned the governor that fusion centers are actually command centers for a network of concentration camps ready to be activated under martial law.
Know that they plan to use the cover story that these centers were for illegal aliens or undocumented immigrants, but that they would then build them all over the nation, prisons that are for entire families, similar to the Nazi concentration camps.
Or similar to when they interned American Japanese citizens in World War II.
Exactly.
In that particular situation.
If you had to make up a list today, what organizations do you feel would be on that list?
Well, I think the Panthers would probably head the list. And I think that there must be other, quote, more militant black organizations that are unknown at this point, at least by us, but perhaps not by the federal government, that would also be on that list. I think the...
Y'all niggas talk all that shit online. All y'all talking about how y'all motherfuckers want to get free. All y'all talking about how y'all sick of this bullshit. But I see who the brave motherfuckers are.
The 8X list was a series of personal databases used by the FBI before the adaptation by the Bureau of Computerized Databases. They were based on paper index cards. They were used to track U.S. citizens and others believed by the Bureau to be dangerous to national security. The indexes generally had different classes of danger the subject was thought to represent. The General Intelligence Division took the files from the Bureau of Investigations, later renamed the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and systemized them via index cards. Contrary to evidence, the cards covered 200,000 people, but by 1939, J. Edgar Hoover had more than 10 million people indexed in the FBI's domestic file system. Titles to numerous index cards included the Reserve Index for influential people to be arrested and held in case of national emergency, the Custodial Index, which included 110,000 Japanese Americans that were to be held in internment camps, the Sexual Deviant Index, the Agitator Index, the Communist Index, and the Administrative Index, which complied several other earlier indexes. Revolutionary poet and recording artist Gil Scott-Heron made a song about Rex 84 entitled The King Alfred Plan.
All you have to do is look in any morning's paper or any afternoon paper or any TV show, and you can see on the screen, not fiction at all, but you can see all of the things he's talking about coming to the fore. For example,
they lock up the leaders of the black and brown people.
Executive orders over the years give the president the claimed authority to do all kinds of extraordinary things, like round up Americans and intern them without due process.
It was not only spying on civilians, but was spying on even public elected officials. Well, while the Army was busy spying on civilians, the United States Navy was studying the question of who ought to survive among the civilians when we become overpopulated, overpolluted, or whatever.
Was a classified scenario and drill developed by the United States federal government to detain large numbers of United States citizens deemed to be, quote, national security threats, end quote, in the event that the president declared a state of national emergency to combat what the government perceived as subversive activities. The plan also authorized the military to direct ordered movements of civilian populations at state and regional levels.
The more recent one, which has raised a few eyebrows, is the one issued January 11th, 2010, which establishes the Council of Governors.
The Council of Governors, 9 state governors and 1 from Puerto Rico. In case of a national emergency, they quarantine the country into 10 sectors and take control from the rest of the governors and state legislatures. If the president wanted to send in military or round up dissidents in a state, his council of cronies would rubber stamp anything. That's why they got picked.
Mad by the sight which your eyes see. If you study the King Alfred plan and you hear some of the things that they intend to do, it is intended to cause almost insanity by the things that you will witness. So I'm taking the phrase in the Torah in Hebrew that says you shall be driven mad by the sight your eyes see, and I'm writing it in Hebrew. And that phrase in Hebrew is numerically equivalent to 1290, which ironically is the numerical equivalence of Melech, Alfred, Taknit, which literally means King Alfred plan in Hebrew. You telling me the Torah is something that a man made up? Come on, cut it out. Everybody knows at the least bit this book was wrote at least 1,000 years ago. And I don't even subscribe to that. But I'll give you a lot of room right now. And I'll say maybe this book was written 1,000 years ago. I'll say maybe this book was written 500 years ago. But even so, if that's what you subscribe to, how could this book be encoded with truths that speak to us today?
That we all know.
More specifically, what did the King Alfred plan outline?
It outlined the moves that the federal government would take over, I believe, a 12 or 24-hour period to capture and incarcerate the leaders of black movements, groups in this country.
The plan also authorized the military to direct ordered movements of civilian populations at state and regional levels.
That's the problem, is that the executive branch is now claiming the ability to use its military authority to execute the laws here at home.
The study had as its rationale and premise was that as we run out of space, as we run out of good air and water, then the decision has to be made as to who has value, whose life is more valuable. As they put it, the haves or the have-nots, and that somebody would have to be exterminated. Well, now you don't
design, that's the way it's supposed to be for them. So, but it occurs in selection. It's generational. It caused you to, and simply to say that they bring a lot of trauma to the child to cause split in personality so that they can demonize and or begin to program. You're going to be a witch, you're going to be a conjurer, you're going to be a program shooter. All kinds of these things happen. And then they're raised in that system, and they're raised to keep all of that hidden down and just have kind of little Joey up or little Sally up. And they may not know until they're 15, 16, they may not know what's inside them till later on.
So a white man walks into Dollar General and kills 3 black people. It was racially...
in the military, which would prepare the military, where if they had to commit, say, melee on Main Street, that they would be able to do so without overburdening their consciences.